Okay, I have now started recording the session. So again, a very good morning, afternoon, evening to all of you, wherever you are on the globe, and a very warm welcome to this third session of the IBSA Blind Football online coaching session. Very nice to see so many people joining us once again for this third and final session, and we hope you enjoy it. Just a couple of things I would like to mention. We will have a special guest joining us later in the session, and that is Owen Bainbridge, who many of you will know. He may be new to some of you. He's a senior internationalist, so one of the top players in the England national team, and he'll be bringing his experience and insight to this course. And the usual presenters, Jonathan Pugh, member of the football committee and England head coach, Ulrich Pfisterer, chairman of the IBSA football committee, Jeff Davis, who's a member of the committee, myself, David Sturton, who I'm in charge of the European Development Project. Just to remind everyone that these online sessions are being offered thanks to the support we receive from UEFA to develop football for people who are visually impaired in Europe. So we are grateful to them for their support. And that's really all from me for the time being. And I will now hand over the floor to Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to have you back. This third series of the workshops is going to be around preparing a team to play, and then moving on from there into speaking with Owen about his journey as a blind footballer and what you can learn from that. So before we go any further, I'd really encourage you to ask questions, because I think that's the best way that we can learn together. So the outcomes from this workshop is, we're going to recap on workshop 2. We're going to talk about preparing and playing in tournaments, which I do understand is maybe not the level where some of you will be coming in at as a coach, but I think if we can relate how we prepare for tournament play, it's very similar to how you prepare for any game of blind football, but with questions and answers. I'm hoping that you can get some benefit from that. Then we move on to a question and answers with Jeff and Owen. And Owen's a great lad, and I think he'll answer any questions you throw at him. So hopefully you have lots for him. And then any questions at the end about what you've learned over the last 3 series. So if you remember in session 2, we talked about what makes a player, and we talked about the 4-corner model, where we look at the physical aspects of blind footballers, the technical aspects of blind footballers, the psychological aspects, and the social aspects. And together, whilst looking at some footage of blind football, we put together a list of the things that we felt that were massively important for players to be able to do or learn when becoming a blind footballer. And in the red down below, you can see that we changed it slightly for players coming into the game for the first time, because there's a subtle difference. Then we talked about the coach and what does a good coach look like, or a coach, and what skills do they need to develop. And we put them into 3 main headings of communication skills, game awareness, and analytical observation skills, working on the technical aspects of the game. And then we said there's some a holistic approach around being organising, a sense of humour, a friend, empathetic, and so on. And then Adam come on, and I think it was one of my favourite parts of the whole series, when we talked about the 2v2 game, or the small-sided game as we call it in England. Move that out of the way for you. Where we discussed about a targeting game and how we can learn to be a coach and as a player together, using a really easy format of the game by integrating small numbers of players and taking them through all aspects of playing the game, and building it through phase 1, 2, and 3 to playing a small-sided, full contact, as close as you can get to mainstream blind football. And we've got so many good questions over that, and I'm sure there's more to follow. Okay, so what I'm going to go through now, and like I said, I know this may not be at the level where some of you will be working with blind players, is that I'm going to show you a bit of a presentation around how the England blind team prepared for the European Championships in Berlin, where we won a bronze medal. And I think it's really important that I show you the detail that we go into, but also try and relate it to the types of things that you could be doing with a single player or a team that you work with.
John, yeah, just to emphasise there, I know it looks, you'll see it, and this is probably more than some of you guys will ever do with one of your teams, but I think what's really good about it is think about, are there areas which you may be able to implement locally? So are there bits that you might be able to go, well, yeah, I can take that little bit and maybe I can implement that locally, because I'm pretty sure that once you guys get started and you've trained and your next thing will be that you'll want to play some games. So, you know, it might be locally, it could be regionally, or it could be in a national competition. And so this just helps you begin to start thinking about those kind of things that you have to think about when you go into any kind of game, whether it be just a local game or whether it be, you know, for a national tournament. So, yeah, and we're trying to make sure, and I'll keep trying to ask John questions to make it relevant to you guys. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And he promised that he would nudge me if I'm going on too fast or talking about things that may not be relevant. So, yeah, just jump in at any time, Jeff. So this was an overview of the tournament and the games. We managed to score quite a lot of goals and end up losing on penalties in the semi-final against Spain. But this is all irrelevant. I want to talk to you really about how we got to the point of training the players, what we prepared for and how we did it. So our process of preparation when preparing for a tournament is that we have what we call a tournament debrief and review. So from the previous tournament, which was 2016, we have a disability performance unit where the performance director, other coaches, they challenge me to explain really why I came up with the tactics I did, what we need to do moving forward to help progress the team, and then obviously some challenging questions around why we didn't succeed. So that is how we start the process. Then we have a physical performance review from a physical performance lead who reviews all the GPS data. I'm sure all of you see the footballers wearing the GPS and heart rate monitors now on their shoulders and across their chest. And using that information, we put physical performance programs together to help ready our players to be able to perform at a high level, meeting the demands of blind football, which is quite a physical and demanding game. And preparation for this area is something that we take massive interest in. So psychologically, we have a sports psychologist who works with our team. He helps with the review. He does questionnaires and speaks with the players and staff, and really encourages us to be open and honest about how we feel the tournament went, and not just performing in terms of on the pitch, but off the pitch, and how we relate to each other, how we get together as a team. Are we together? Are there fractions of different people in there that need to be addressed, and comes up with some really good and clear objectives for us to try and work on to help that going forward. Me, head coach, I like to work on what I call the one step ahead plan. So trying to produce footballers and a football team that plays slightly different to the teams that we play against, and maybe somewhere in the future a really expansive, exciting type of football. But obviously then I have to deliver that to the coaching staff and finalise what that really looks like for us to prepare for that year going into a tournament. And then Jeff, who was my head of performance, he agreed the plan and what the development looked like, and essentially agreed the finance which we would need to be able to make this work, and always very supportive when he did so. So the plan overview, what we got to was we wanted an individual gap plan. So the gap is what they do away from when they're with us. So obviously, as a team, we used to meet once a month for 3 or 4 days to do an England training camp. But obviously, there's a lot of downtime when they're at home and they're asked to train away from camps. So we make sure that they have a physical performance program and a coaching program that they work towards. And what does that look like? And it's all individualized to each player. So our key messages was changing our mindset and the context. So we felt that as an England team, we got anxious and nervous in the big games, which meant that we couldn't play to our potential. So we wanted to change our mindset of our players and be a little bit more, a bit stronger in the big games. So we worked on that quite a lot. Game savvy, just learning how to manage games better, not throwing games away in the last minute or making silly decisions which cost us. So we worked on that. Obviously, we had a technical program with strategies, tactics, and technical program that for the players to work on, which allowed us to do the tactics we wanted them to do. But that come into training camps when we add them all together. We had a new detailed physical performance training plan, but it was linked to competition instead of individually working away from home. So making sure that they could cope with the demands of playing 3 games in a row in extreme heat or whatever that was needed. And then team objectives. So we went through what these team objectives were and what was expected from our performance director, and hopefully we can meet them targets.
Yeah, John, just a question from Pete regarding how was it funded, and do you want to just share about, it's fully supported by the
Yeah,
Football
you can
Federation?
probably explain that better than me, Jeff. But
yeah, I mean, just to answer you, Pete, the English Football Association did take on all of the elite impairment teams, 6 of them, and they fully support them to go to events for training weekends, also the talent pathway. So, we're very well. The guys are very fortunate that that happens. But yeah,
and just on top of that, from when Jeff was in charge of us, I think what money doesn't just buy you winning. And I think what Jeff wanted to put in place is a support service that really supported the players. So we are a fairly heavy staff, from head coach to assistant coach to goalkeepers coach to psychologist to physical performance to obviously doctor and physio, team manager. But all these were services that we put in place to make sure the players were safe and felt comfortable, trusted us, and made sure they could perform at the highest level, like all senior elite teams. So we were very lucky that we had that put in place.
Can I say something? Yeah. I think because being the chairman IPSA football, I've also been up till the European Championships. Jonathan talks about the German head coach, and I always showed other countries when I did workshops how exemplary the FA in regard to integration and fostering helping disability football groups. That's of course very high standard and something to strive for each country, really. And nevertheless, I think if you don't strive in your own particular country for excellence, you can take many aspects out of the English example here, as Jeff said too, and strive for excellence. So if we don't have that, then we pedal probably around a bit. And the other thing is, go in your own country, really go to, or when I go into doing a workshop, say in Kazakhstan or somewhere else, very important, the integration aspect, to really knock at the door at the Football Federation you are at for support, so that you can and give the English model you see here, give that as an example, how they can go. Because I tell you, even though Germany is a powerhouse in football right up till now in general terms, and people think there's a lot of money, and there is a lot of money, Germany, for instance, has a lot to learn from England here. So, but it's a very good example to go as far as you can in your particular country. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Sully. That's very kind, and yeah, we're very proud of what we do here. It doesn't, and like I've said in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean you got a divine right to win anything because you got the support. But I think to have a disability team with the full support of a governing body is pretty amazing. And it'd be great if everyone in the world who had a team had the same support, because I think the level of sport would drive up. So working with the psych, we work on a kind of a stop, continue, start, or stop, start, continue kind of model. So we work out from the last tournament what we got to stop, what we should continue and what we're good at, and then what we need to start doing to help us get better. And I won't go through with the list because there's a fairly big list. But we had things like we were worried about what other teams were doing instead of focusing on ourselves. That's something we had to stop. Overanalyze other players, and we're quite an emotional team. So we let the emotions of what was happening always affect us, and we try to stop that. But what we wanted to continue is we had a winning mentality. We were proud to represent what we do, our country, and we really wanted to work hard. We like to help each other, and we wanted to be resilient. We've had a lot of failures, and we wanted to keep going and make sure that we were, striving for that greater thing. Hopefully was winning something. We wanted to stick to our values because we had some certain values that we put together. But we wanted to start accepting that we're good, because we were a good team, but we're not great, and it will take time. We needed to take time to develop and learn, and we're still learning now. And this presentation was from 4 years ago, so it's a long process. We wanted to start enjoying our football with all the finance that was coming into the game. We stopped enjoying football. We took it as more of a job, and didn't realise that what we were doing was pretty amazing, and the opportunities that we were getting was amazing. And so we try to create a culture where we encourage the players to enjoy themselves as well as working hard. And we got somewhere near in that tournament, actually, and the players were fantastic in this tournament.
Jonathan, how much, just maybe representing some other people who may ask, how much was actually coming from those very good points you've got there from the players, or how much were they involved?
This is all players. This is not us.
Okay.
This is the players. So this is, sorry, I should have read the top bit. This is what we learned as a team with the sports psych. So we did lots of workshops around what we thought was not working very well. I mean, I've got all the photographs of the flip chart that we were riding on, and this is all player-led. This is not staff-led. Internally, we do our own staff review, like I said at the start. But when it came to performance, we knew how to coach. We kind of knew tactics, but we really wanted the players to buy into what they thought was right. So this was really encouraged for the players to do, really. And we sat in there as staff and kind of and was part of their team as a part of their being part of our team. So yeah, this is all players. But then when we moved on, again, this is players and staff now. So this is when myself, Adam, Jeff kind of come in and said, well, what do we need to do on the pitch? The things I just mentioned were kind of all psychological, kind of mental aspects, social aspects. Whereas this is the bit, so we need to be better. And this is probably the first time I can relate back to workshop 1. We're talking about, I'm not going to be embarrassed to say that England are one of the better teams in Europe, if not, high up there. But we still have to work on loose balls, getting onto a loose ball, controlling the ball and choose the correct way. So I said in the first workshop about learning which control. So if you're doing a standard V, if you ramp your feet up at the back, is that going to give forward momentum for you to be able to move forward? Are you going to do a half turn when receiving so you can turn with a defender behind you so you can, roll the defender and get an opportunity? And so we wanted the players really to go back to the basics and make sure that they understood what those basics means at the right time in major competition. So we reiterate all those points. So, to think that, workshop 1, that's very basic and, do I really want this? Should I move it on? At the top level, I think the best teams in the world do the basic things brilliantly. And we really wanted to get to that, as I talked about here, speed of approach, standing up, finding space.
I just wanted, as from an observer of the English team, I just like to share with the new coaches and people here something. And obviously, with what we have on screen, something must have really worked with this, because I remember almost the same team and staff and people becoming in the European Championships last in Luano. And if you see that basically the same, the level of performance, which had increased after that. Obviously, you instead of throwing it all in and sacking people or players leaving, it's basically, more or less the same team which performed really, really well after a disaster in the European Championships. And I think, was it 13 or 15 or?
Yeah, 13. Yeah.
13, right? So that's just an example how he can turn it around.
Yeah, no, and you made a good point earlier on the last slide where I think I wasn't around for 2013, but I think if I'm thinking about where they went wrong, it was probably because they wanted to lead the team. And like you made a really good point where the team come up with these ideas themselves. As coaches, our idea was to try and make them better as players and people. So they kind of took control of this. So that and they were really critical of themselves, which it was easier for them to do it than us, because that would have created a kind of a bad relationship. So yeah, that you're right. The same players, the same team, pretty much, establish themselves as a top team in Europe. And it was
just a
right.
couple of things just to add. Firstly, I think it's really important that everybody can use, talk to the players and get feedback from players, because players might not quite understand something that you're asking them to do, but it's because maybe you're not explaining it well enough, or I don't know, it's too noisy, or there may be some reason. If you don't ever ask the players, I think it's really important you ask the players, their understanding and how they think things should be done. And the other bit is that Francis Sebastian has said about, it's really important that people on the call, if you're in a country where you want to try and develop, you do take it to the Football Federation, because, I think that pressure from within the country to try and do something will begin, hopefully, some kind of dialogue, some kind of opening of the door to allow blind football to be taken on by, one of the football federations.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And I think I'm going to answer my own question here. I think what this could be misconceived as is losing control as a head coach. But I want to make clear that this was all done in a structure. So the first slide about how we prepared for this, this is what we wanted. We wanted the players to take responsibility and ownership of their own performances. And our job, my job as a head coach, and the other people's roles within the team, was to facilitate this and help them to do it, as opposed to tell them to do it. And I want to make that quite clear that there are some difficult decisions to make as a head coach, but it's so much easier when you've got the players to buy into you when you're doing it. So those are the reasons why. I'm reading off the list here now. I don't really want to do that, but so ultimately what we wanted to do is get better at 1v1 situations, make better decisions, defend better, and recycle the ball quicker, and all the same types of things you hear from the Premier League, from the Bundesliga, from La Liga. All the coaches say the same. That's what they want, and that's what the players wanted. Moving on. So I mentioned game savvy, and again, it's quite a difficult one to explain. Some people might call this cheating in the game. I'm not going to say that's the case, but things like facing the ball all the time to make sure they're focused on the ball so they can stay in tune to the game. When the game's going against us, use the goalkeeper. Get them to slow the game down for us, because they can see what's going on. We can communicate that. Slow down the game if we're winning, just so we can get a breather to try and all things that top level teams do. Set plays, walk through the opposition. You got a free kick and there's a wall in front of you, and you can stand there, feel where they are. Try and find out, and just be patient. The game is long, and we as an English team, we feel like we have to go and win the game. And ultimately, if we play to our values and play to our performances, we felt that we could win the game at any time, not necessarily quickly. This is quite an interesting piece. So I'll just explain to you a little bit about our program physically. So I talked about the gap training, and I'll show you a bit of a spreadsheet in a second where our physical performance lead, Asa Hussein, put together a way of monitoring our players from a program. So we used a thing called Polar Flow, which is a downloadable app on any smartphone, which linked to a heart rate monitor. So when the players were asked to train, they would wear their heart rate monitors and have their phone in their pocket or on an arm sleeve, and we'd be able to monitor how long they trained for, how hard they worked, what duration, and they got into their max heart rate zone. And so we could see if they were doing their physical program. And we used to get messages. This is how it was deciphered. So what we were asking them for, sorry, I'll move that a bit bigger, was a minimum of, we wanted them to work 5 days a week to train. We wanted a minimum of 5 sessions that week to train, a minimum of 6 hours per week over that duration of time, a minimum of 30 minutes per session if zone 5 had been hit. Spend 10 minutes in zone 5, which is the highest heart rate in your monitor zone. That's your conditioning zone. That's where you start feeling the benefits. But it's really hard to get to that point, especially when you get fitter. We wanted a minimum of 3 football sessions or football conditioning sessions. So the difference would be, a technical session would be me trying to develop a player better technically, tactically. A football conditioning session would be working really hard with the ball at their feet. A minimum of 2 strength and conditioning sessions within that. So going to the gym at least twice a week, and that would have been supported by an S&C coach as well. We wanted a recovery session in that. We wanted 3. We didn't want players going from one session to another straight away. We wanted them to have some recovery time so they didn't, kind of lose the benefits from each session. I don't know if that sounds like a lot or not, but it seems like a lot to me, but they did it, in fairness. Oh, sorry, I was going to show you. So when you go down through the slides, through this, sorry, to me that right side, this is how the report would come back. So we'd have the players and how much they'd done. So Azim, as a player of us, or Brandon, he'd only done 69% of this particular week, a 4-week period. And that's why we probably didn't win the Euros. Blame it on Brandon. But it gives you an example of what he was doing, why and how long. So he wasn't hitting his duration 5, so he wasn't getting conditioned. So he wouldn't have been as fit as he needed to be. Whereas Azim was getting fit. He was learning how to get fit, which was really helpful. We got the Dan English was injured in this week, so he didn't do any conditioning sessions. But it just shows you we could monitor whatever the players were doing, and there were some really hard workers, Owen, who would be on there, luckily. And then you get the lazy goalkeepers who never want to do as much as the outfield players, do they? So they're quite low. He left the program, so he wouldn't be part of that. So it just shows you that we had a really good way of kind of monitoring the players and making sure that they stuck to the high standards of what was expected of them. So our team objectives, again, the reason why they're green, amber or red is this is when we did a debrief of this tournament. The ones in green we felt, well, we'd done. The red we didn't, and the orange we thought that maybe there was some way to improve. So we didn't think our control or working on transitions was as good as it could have been. We thought we delayed, dribbled, shooting and passing was pretty good. Going into some of the negative ones, I think our counter, advance, retain. So we worked on a certain type of language that we spoke when playing the game. So 3 different types of ball in possession. So retaining possession. So can we keep the ball to kind of slow down the game? Can we advance up the pitch, or do we need to counter attack? So that would be shouted by a player, a guide or coach or a goalkeeper, or just to try and help that situation. We did a thing called double screening, where we had 2 defenders who would follow the ball on each side of the pitch to make sure that if the ball was lost, then they could pick up the second ball to make sure that we kept pressure in the opposition's half. We did do that as well as we'd like to. And there's obviously a big list there, and you could go through it. But
John, if you was doing this with a local team,
yep.
What kind of things, what you might do? So I suppose technically it might be, not to lose possession, during the game, or
I'll give you a really good
how
example.
would you maybe adapt some of these if you're just doing a local team?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a good example. So I've not always been a head coach of the England team. I used to work in the National League as one of the coaches for one of the teams, and we had a side that technically wasn't as good as two of the other teams who had a lot of England players playing for them. We had a lot of new players, brand new players. And if I was doing a team objective for one of the league matches, our first kind of objective as an over thing would be maybe get to half time without conceding a goal, because we'd lost all our games. And then broken down within that, tactically, we'd need to have good defensive shape. So maybe we'd work on defensive shape. So, you know, in here, you know, having a certain style that we try and work to. Physically, it'd be quite hard. It'd be quite hard to defend quite a lot of the game. So we'd ask them to work on their fitness. And technically, you know, what do you do when you win the ball? You know, can you pass it out? Can you dribble it to get a counter attack? So we all of these are broken down. You could pick one of these technical aspects for one player in any of the teams that I've ever coached and say, look, you need to work on your control on this, because you're the player that's going to receive the ball up front. We need you to be able to receive it. We need you to turn. So you can break down all these aspects and put it down to whatever level you're working at. Does that answer the question, Jeff?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just trying, you know, how the guys on the call could break it down with their guys. Yeah,
and remember what we talked about. If you're working with one player, that, you know, if you've got really good communication with that player and you're asking them what they feel and you're giving them some advice of what you think, then you should be able to come up with a 2 or 3 kind of. I never like to have more than 3 outcomes for one player in the training session, because I think it becomes too complicated, and they can be as basic or as technically high advanced as you want them to be. So it could be, we just want to move on want to work on your lateral movement. So going sideways to control the ball, that might be one. It might be then, when you've controlled it, can you do an accurate pass? And then this third one might be, can you move into space after? And just something really basic. And that can be done with one player with a coach. You know, they're quite easy. And then again, I like to, if I'm working on my own with a player, I would give them a story or a picture to work in. So if you're working with a player who plays, make it difficult for myself now, right wing in a diamond formation, a 1-2-1, and you've only got one player, there's no team around, there's no game, but I might say to them, right, you're playing on the right side of a diamond, you're playing against an opposition who are playing with 2 advanced strikers. I'm going to stand and throw the ball, and I want it to get through the gap, and I need you to cut it out. So yeah, I want you to work 2 meters off the boards. They're playing behind you. Can you cut it out? And if you get it, can you do a switch pass to your partner, who's obviously not there? But all of a sudden, that mental picture becomes real, and it becomes a real life game experience. And as a coach, then you can, they can ask questions. You know, okay, so what happens if I'm too close to the boards and they throw it inside me? Then you can start saying, well, our lateral movement has to be quick. Can you work with the goalkeeper? You know, all of a sudden you get in a game realistic environment where players can learn. So that could be across any shape, any formation, or working on any aspect of the game in possession or out of possession. I think it's really key. That's something that I've learned over the years, is that throwing a ball at a blind person to control is one thing. Ask yourself the question, why are you doing it, is another. And then when you're doing it for a reason, the session becomes more real, and it becomes a more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, because I've been coaching recently. Been coaching a lad who's not a beginner, but I've been coaching a guy, and it's one-to-one coaching, and I think that point you make about making it realistic, because anybody you can throw a ball at any player, and they'll probably get good at controlling it and getting it back to you. But trying to make it realistic in a game situation is a really important part.
Yeah, exactly. So the event objectives, that they were a team of objectives. This is as a team. Sorry, I got lost myself there. Obviously, we want to qualify for the World Cup, because you have to come in the top 4 or 5 to get to the World Cup, which is a big one for us. Because not qualifying for the World Cup means that as a nation that doesn't, you've got 2 years to wait for your next competition to get an opportunity. It's also a qualification opportunity for the Paralympics. So that was our main one, really. We wanted to make the final. Obviously, we didn't. We lost in the semi-final. And we wanted to win the European Championships, which is why we were there, but we didn't either. But we wanted to manage the players to a high standard throughout the tournament. And we wanted to concentrate properly on our preparation off and on the pitch, which I think we did really well. and create a cohesive and interdisciplinary way of working. So essentially, we wanted to work together, staff and players, with no stone unturned, really. So I've not got too long. I won't go longer than till 6, so I'll rush through a few bits. But so this was our squad for that tournament, and what I like to do with each squad, we played either a 1-3 or a diamond shape regularly. So I'd like to identify which players play best in which positions, so it would help me prepare for a game. So if we're playing a diamond, for instance, who are my backmen, who are my wingers, and who's my forward or the middleman, depending on what shape we play, just helps moving forward. So pre-match, so we'd have a video analyst report from our video analyst. I'd also want to watch the game live if possible, because you don't see the full picture when you see it on video, because the picture follows the ball, and I'd like to know what's going on at the back when we're making decisions around how we can counterattack or what the coaches are saying or what not to learn. And we'd work on things like, common trends, what's their tactics, who are the key players, and what set plays they use. We'd come up with a game plan and what tactical needs are with that. And then we go to the who fits, so the player profile. So who fits the tactics that we're trying to put in place. So if we need, as an example, a ball playing man who plays at the back, we call him a backman or a central defender. It would be your Karen Seal type who can receive the ball, turn and play really quickly. If you wanted a strong, physical, someone who can run from the back, who doesn't give away many opportunities to score, it'd be a Dan English. So, we depending on our tactics, it'd be who we picked for what position, really. So something that's quite new at that point, our early delivery. So we could sometimes finish a game at 9 o'clock at night and then be playing at 11 o'clock the next day. So as you can imagine, to try and fast track through this is very difficult, but to give the players the right information before a game is important. So I think this is actually the first time we actually did it this way. So we come up with a game plan. So we'd always work pretty much through the night to get what we needed, come up with the tactics and individual roles. And I've put in here role cards. So if there's a role, so I'll give you an example. So if I'm playing as a central defender and I've got a right winger, it's very likely during the game that I would run from my central defensive position and overlap my winger or go through the middle and end up in a position where another player should be. So how I got the players to explain this to the players is I had cards with the tactical elements of what the role and responsibility was of that player. And the way I try to explain it is, if you had your card, I had mine, and I walked past you and I went into your position, I'd need to be able to know what your card said, so I could then act as a right winger, and you'd have to come to the back and you'd have to be a central defender. Obviously, within the tactics, we wouldn't want that to stay like that, because there would be a player playing in a position for that reason, but it would happen. So as a central defender playing on the right wing, he needs to know what the tactics were for that right player. So we'd make sure every player knew individual tactics. To get the plans out early, I'd verbalise our tactics via WhatsApp to the players in their rooms, so they'd get an early insight into what we were planning on doing. And then at breakfast, or before breakfast even, we'd meet as a team and we'd deliver the whole thing to the players. And they'd ask us questions from what I delivered the night before. So they had a really clear understanding of what we were asking. Pre-match, obviously, I wouldn't really tell them the team until about an hour before the game, because unless I felt like it was necessary, because I wanted everyone to learn all the positions, or else that game card role wouldn't really work. I'd give them individual role and responsibilities, the key points. We'd do the warm-up, and then the last bit would be a bit of motivation around the opportunity we had. This is something that I come up with the players. This is how I delivered the team talk. So I'd have this is my sheet, my team talk sheet. I put the positions down, what cues I wanted them to do, and what their role was within that. Maybe draw a little bit of tactics on there just for my benefit, so I can remember what points I was trying to make. And these are the things that come up with the players. So what they wanted to know, okay, you wanted us to manage the game properly. So that we put a statement in there around what that looked like for that tactic. Doing the simple things excellently. So again, picking apart the tactic or one of the individual roles and explaining to them what the most basic thing they need to do within that tactic, so they can really believe that they could do it. Effective communication. So what you're saying and will it help? So that was a big one on me because I used to speak a lot, and Early would probably back me up. I'm quite an aggressive sounding, loud, I want this done this way kind of coach on the pitch. And I quickly learned not that quickly, but over a few years, that just saying what was needed was more beneficial than lots of words. So I kind of even wrote on my hand at one point, will it help? Just so I could keep remembering that, don't over guide, let them work out the game. And it made me maybe a better manager of a team because I needed to do that.
Yeah, just to come in just briefly, good point, Jonathan. I think you as a coach and anybody who's coached or myself for a while, we all sort of notice it ourselves, and also watching other coaches who have been longer in the game, how the better the teams, the better the coaches, how less they talked. And of course, they give you a really bad example of mine. First European Championships in Athens, we were actually two coaches then. The roles weren't even clear, and it was the very first time at the championships. And I think anybody of the participants who would become a national coach or in their teams, we screamed and yelled nonstop at the players, and that of course was, I would say, very counterproductive because they were nervous. Young players and novice are very nervous on the pitch anyway. So if you as a sighted coach on the side who's nervous as well and of course wants to do the best, but if you overtake and scream and yell at the players and stuff, it becomes chaotic and it's very counterproductive. And what's Jonathan saying is, and I'm telling you as both of us experienced coaches, is know that already and try as early in the piece, as early as possible, work on this, that you don't overcoach and scream and yell and only say what Jonathan said, only say the very necessary things into the game that you feel the players need, especially in the early stages. And you're all beginners, okay?
Yeah. Thanks, Ellie.
John, I was just going to suggest we've run out of time. Can you just do maybe the first slide about what you did, I think, in the Romania game, and then when we post all of these presentations online, people will then be able to go through at their own leisure.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. So
pick which one you want to show first.
Yeah, I'll just quickly mention this, and I will go just read through this because it's quite important from a match perspective. A head coach role is quite difficult because it's not only identifying, tactical things and players' performance, but guiding opposition, best option, will it help? Linking with the guide, you're monitoring the opposition's shape, your own shape, individual team performances. Yeah, you need to give technical information. You've got 60 seconds to deliver a timeout, which never is long enough. Half time, I like to have a meeting with the coaches before I deliver anything to the players. So I wanted us all to agree that what we were talking about, as opposed to having 2 or 3 different voices saying different things and confusing the players. And then player workload, which was difficult. I had an earpiece with our psychology, sports, physical performance, telling me whose heart rate was, who'd be working in zone 5 for too long and they need to come off the pitch, and I had to try and manage that. So that's always a difficult thing for me to do on the side. I'll quickly go through this, and I'm going to show 2. Jeff, I know you want me to say 1, but I'll show 2. This is a Romania game, and Romania, who have come on so far and done so well. They at this tournament, they were still a novice team, and what generally novice teams do, they block, defend, and they kind of cover the front of the goal. It's real difficult to score, and sometimes you can find yourself, even as a good team like we were at the time, finding it real difficult to break a team down. So we come up with this idea called the 3-step principle, where we would sit really deep to allow them to come out and to try and maybe get some players forward, 2 players. So if we did counter-attack, we'd only be going against 1 or 2 players. So we freed up some space behind them. And as the game progressed, as they got more tired, then we kind of turn the screw and move up the pitch and then pin them in their half. And because if they were losing by that point, they'd need to chase the game, which would mean that, we'd get more and more opportunities. And so from here, this is from kickoff, literally from the kickoff of the game, where we've got Robin, who's his number 6. I don't know how good this is going to play, so I'll explain it a little bit. He wins the ball back, runs it out of possession, doesn't get a shot off. The 2 guys who play up front then run all the way up. They throw a long ball, we cut it out and score straight on the counter attack. Exactly what we were trying to plan for. So Robin wins the ball back. The ball goes out of play. He doesn't really secure his first touch very well. So we run back to quite a deep position. We against a team like Romania, we'd usually keep the middleman right high up and stop them playing out, but we went really deep. So they'd get these 2 people forward. We won the ball back. And then Dan was only running at 1 player, 2 players, got a shot. Keeper probably should have done better, but tactically it worked. Then we have an overview of where we were, how many shots we had, possession, everything from our video analysts. And then we went into the French game. And for the France team are a very good side, and they like to pass the ball. So what our tactics were on this, we kept the high line in this one, but we kept them centrally. We kept our players inside centrally to allow the opportunity for their 2 defenders to pass the ball down the line, give them the space to do that, or through the gap, which they like to do. So they like to try and get the ball to the 2 high players. So our idea was, as soon as they throwed it short, our middleman would then go and press, allowing them to play down the sides and not try and win the ball back. So we wanted them to pass it and not get beat. We didn't want any middle runs. And then as he moved and said void, these 2 defenders would move out and mark, which meant that when they played the ball, we'd hopefully catch the ball out and then again have a counter attack. And I think this video encapsulates it quite well. And the last thing I'll talk about, Jeff, before you turf me off, is it's kind of my favourite part of this presentation, because this was a slide of a training drill that we were working on, and we called it break lines passing. So we wanted to be able to, I don't know if you agree, but the most of the passing that happens in blind football are in a square, so around the outside or diagonal. And not very often do we play straight balls into strikers' feet to try and play off the shoulder of defenders to get opportunities central of goal. So we were working on finding good central positions for our back player or back 2 players. And then we wanted our player to move out to the boards to encourage the 2 defenders, or 1 defender in this case, to go and mark or to try and cut that ball out. And then we played the ball in the gap to give ourselves an opportunity central. And when I show you the next video, and I will stop after that, if I could just show you where Brandon it was, his movement to move a defender out, I'll try and stop it at the right time. So here we have the ball there, and what you can see in this top corner is Brandon moving from centre to the boards, and this guy, their winger, moves out with him, which creates an opportunity for this pass to go through the gap. Yeah, so going to I will stop that now. Just when we talked about having a session where you work with 1 player, that movement, that could have been done on his own in isolation. That could have been lateral movement to the boards and back in, and working on receiving a pass through the gap. So yeah, I will put this all up. There's every game we played, every tactic we did, and why. We finished off with a squad assessment where we felt they played within that tournament and who was our better players. A quick 1-liner about why and how we got to. I won't play this, but this is a video of all the goals. And then I'll move on to a break.
Yeah, thanks, John. So yeah, we're going to break now, everybody. If we can come back at the top of the hour, so wherever you are in the world, if you can come back, it gives us about 6 minutes. So see you in 6 minutes, and we'll start with Owen, and I'll be asking him and Uli and John some questions, and hopefully you'll be feeding some questions through to those guys. So see you in 6 minutes. John, Owen, are you on?
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me, Jeff?
I can hear you, Owen. I can still hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Owen, so basically, I'll just ask you, if it's all right, I'll just ask you some questions. If we get questions from the floor, I'll ask you those as well. So it's things like, I'll start off really easy. How many years you've been playing? How many games have you played? What position? And then we'll just go, the first one, once you asked if that was okay, talking about, was you born blind or did you acquire it? And if you're okay to talk about that. Then, how did you first get involved? And then questions like, what did you find the most difficult skill to master? Remembering all the people on the call are, new coaches, or some are coaches, but for, as a blind player, what's the most difficult skill that you had to try and master? And to things
I'll try and give.
Yeah, go on.
I'll try and give from a couple of perspectives there, then, Jeff, mine and what I've perceived from other players and stuff, because it's so different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. And then we go on to, what you think the main skill sets that you need in blind football. Who's your most difficult opponent and why? What's your best moments? What's your worst moments? Now, I don't know if we can get all of these in, but we'll try. What formation do you prefer to play and why? What does your training week look like? And to finish, I suppose it's what would you say to the coaches online that would help them develop their players best? So, have you got some golden nuggets you might be able to give them from a player's perspective about how they might like to be coached and to be spoken to and to be treated? So they're the kind of questions that I'll ask. We might have some from the floor, which will be a little bit different, but they're the kind of ones we'll be asking.
Yeah, it's perfect, Jeff.
Is that all right, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So look, we've got 3 minutes. So if you want to quickly do whatever you need to do, and then I'll talk to you in 3 minutes. All right.
See you in a sec, Jeff.
Thanks, mate. Bye. Right, hi everybody. Hopefully you've been able to come back. I'm delighted to introduce to you to Owen Bainbridge. Owen's a player who's, I suppose, started at 18 and he's played for a long period of time. So, Owen, just to say welcome, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, good. Well, Owen, there's a slide on the screen which people can see, but also what I'd like to say, I'm going to ask Owen and John and Uli a number of questions, but if any of you've got a question for Owen, he's very happy to answer any question that you may have, and just so you may, he's got a different perspective than we've probably got to the game. So, Owen, so just tell us a little bit about yourself and, how you got involved in blind football, why you got involved, and what position you play currently for England.
Yeah, so I never got actually, like it says on there, I never got involved in blind football until I was 18. I started out training with a local kind of just domestically, really, a team, and then started playing in our domestic league. Had about a season and a half with them, and then I was lucky enough to get my first cap for England in 2010. And it kind of all started there, really. And I've had a few injuries along the way, but I'm still here, still going, and there's nothing else I want to do, really.
Okay, look, do you mind sharing with us about how, was you born blind or did you acquire blindness? And how did you find football when you first started?
Yeah, so for me, it was I was born with congenital glaucoma, so I had a little bit of sight in the left eye, not a lot, but enough to kind of, I could play a little bit of football so long as the ball was coming in close to my feet and stuff like that. And then at the age of 7, I got an infection in the left eye, and I lost what sight I had in that. So I was totally blind then, and have been since. I've got no light perception, so I've got no vision at all. And I kind of went through teen years, really, maybe knocking a ball around with friends, or not involved in any sort of blind football. Always wanted to be part of a team. That was always something that was kind of missing. I had a couple of dreams come true, really. One of them was when I started playing domestically, and then the big one was obviously when I got my first cap for England, and but it took a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, so you spoke about, you had a dream. I mean, do you remember ever seeing football, or is your memory is just from what you sort of imagined, what how you see the game being played?
Yeah, it's definitely because I was so obviously quite young still. I mean, 7's quite young to lose your sight, and my vision wasn't the best. So if I wanted to watch something on the television or something, I was right up against it. And so I haven't really got much of a memory of watching football played. And I think all my sort of dreams, my first dreams, were to just be part of a team. I was brought up with football. My dad always played football every single Saturday. I was at a football match watching that, and I think it was the idea of being part of a team and playing the sport that I loved.
So you wanted to be a player. So how did you first get involved? You spoke about you used to kick around with your friends. So how did you first find out that there might be this game called blind football that you might be able to play?
So I was at a blind college in Worcester from 16 to 19 years old, and when I was 18, one of the lads had actually who was at the college had gone for a pint with one of the lads who was part of the Worcester blind football team, and that was kind of a stroke of luck, really, because they were looking for players. He said he thought he might just know the person, and that was how I started. They said, come down and train on Friday, which I did, and I've never looked back since.
So take us through that first session you went to. So you turned up, you've kicked a little bit around with your mate. So what did that look like, that first session?
I think it was that obviously, I think it was something that I've really had to get used to. So, I mean, when you're a kid or whatever age, and you're just knocking around with your mates and that, it's all about shooting. It's all about kicking the ball as hard as you can. It's all about whatever. So I think it was that. I think it was the structure of the session. Not just about the shoot and not just about the kicking the ball as hard as you can. It's about learning how to dribble. It's about dribbling in and out of people. It's about orientating yourself. Where are you on the pitch? Where is everybody else on the pitch?
And in terms of the coach, I mean, so, you knew that somebody was there. So how did the coach welcome you? Did you feel welcome? Did you feel you was a hindrance? Talk us through that.
I mean, at the time, that team, they were looking for players. And I think in blind football, it's all, I mean, I'll speak for now then, and the outlook now. It's when new people come in, it is a welcoming thing. We want players involved in the game. It's not just about the current game. We think about the game going forward. And I think that's a little bit what it was like for me, really. They knew that obviously I wasn't really that capable at the time of doing what they could do. And I think it's about that mixed session of maybe more senior players then helping and supporting players that maybe are new.
Yeah, I suppose this question's really for Uli and John. I mean, you both have coached, Uli, you in Australia and Germany, and John, you in England. You've both had new players that have turned up. How did you approach those new players? Because, I think Owen picks up a really good point. We haven't got loads of blind players playing across the world. So what did you do to make those players feel really welcome, even though they might just be doing really basic movement and skills?
Do you want to start, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, you're right. I mean, in this country, we don't have an abundance of blind footballers. So when you meet one, it's really important. Their first kind of meeting with a player or coach is really leaves a lasting memory. So the first thing I ever do with a player is make sure they're safe and they have fun. So make sure we don't give any expectations. Don't try and tell them they're going to be an England player before they've even got onto the pitch, and just help them understand that the players that play for us are just good lads, just like Owen, really good lad, nice bloke. He'll talk to anyone, and I try and make sure there's another player around to talk to them. But yeah, just make sure you understand where they've come from and what they're looking to do, because it's quite a daunting thing to do for the first time playing blind football.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think it's literally as a coach or teacher, it's a huge challenge, and it's a really welcoming challenge, because that in countries where the medical provisions services are so good, like in England or France or Germany, in the middle of Europe, or also Australia, that the totally blind player, the potential when somebody's new, you have is, of course, from the coaches, from our point of view, huge, because we know it's like there could be another jewel, there could be another. With the examples we have, we know that blind football can turn that person's life around in such a positive way. And so when I had new players, potentially new players, I would very much. All the introduction. I would literally let them watch a little bit how people pass the ball a bit, and I would take them aside, not assessing them individually on balance or on their kinesthetic skills and that sort of thing, because you get an eye for that, how good people are with the balance and stuff. But I would always straight away in the very beginning, when the other players were kicking the ball around a bit and would do a bit of passing and stuff, I could leave the rest of the players by themselves usually, because you have a sighted goalkeeper there and all this, and they all would be aware that we had a new player. And I would take them literally to the sideboards for them to feel secure that they had a permanent reference point, talk with them, pass the ball a little bit around with them, and be actually quite close to them to make sure that they feel very safe and comfortable. And then assess in a way, not with a sheet, with ticking off what I needed to assess, but basically see where are they at in a sense. Can they actually run properly? Have they had some sight before? And then if the session which would move on, I would try to integrate them in a way that they're close to the goalkeeper, that they maybe get the ball first. All the other players would know that that's their very first time. And I felt that was a good example. Jonathan, in the very first session of our coaching, showed I would then assign basically a player, an experienced player, to when we played a match in the end of the training session, assigned one of our blind players to them and give them a sort of spot to more or less listen, watch the game, and get the ball from the goalkeeper a few times, maybe pass the ball, what I said many times before, if they don't know how to pass a ball, but to quickly give them a feel that they're in with the other guys. To pass maybe a ball with a sole just along the side and stuff, but to basically hover around them and see that they don't get run over because they don't know the ball yet and all this, but be in a natural way, straight away, sort of a little bit part of the final match later on, knowing that they wouldn't have any basic skills at all. And then take it on in the next session that I would do prior to the session with the rest of the guys, to have a lot of one-to-one with them, stopping the ball, protecting the ball, and getting them very much also used to the new idea that it's actually a team match, and that in the end that they get physically actually pushed around a little bit too, and do a lot of things along orientation mobility wise along the sideboard with them, so that they don't feel lost in space. There are a lot of things to say, but it's a situation when you have a new guy coming into a training session and where you have 10 people and there's a lot of noises, to not overprotect them, but to be sure that you don't lose them again, because it can be quite scary. If they get run over early in the place by someone, they might never come back. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for that. We've got a number of questions, Owen, from people attending. So let me ask you some of those. So the first one from Sebastian, asking, before you became blind, did your experience of physical literacy, did that help you when you became a blind sports athlete, or was it a totally different skill set that you needed once you did become blind? Owen, that's to you.
You might be on mute, Owen.
Is he still around? Has he gone?
So is that the actually like totally running it?
Your signal's not great, Owen.
Can you hear?
Yeah, so physical literacy is, your movement patterns.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
can hear you now. Yeah, so basically, did your movement patterns?
Can you hear me now? Perfect.
Yeah, got you now, Owen. Did your movement patterns?
Yeah, so mine weren't great. So obviously I went blind quite early, and I had a lot to learn when I started playing blind football. And even now, that's still going on. You get that with a lot of blind players. If they haven't seen people run, if they haven't seen movement patterns and stuff like that, that can be something that that needs to be addressed quite early.
Yeah. And did you find anything that was most difficult in terms of that movement literacy, that orientation of a pitch, and knowing where you are on a pitch?
So the orientation, I think I've always been quite good at, because obviously I'd been brought up blind. So even from everything I'd done, mobility work, getting from A to B, all that sort of stuff, because I was obviously had been blind for quite some time, that was probably a good attribute of mine. But it was the movement patterns, the understanding of the game, even like the technique of running. I hadn't seen anyone run, so I almost had to learn to run properly.
Yeah. What main skill sets do you think you need for blind football?
Orientation, your communication, your listening skills, and learning to be able to move like a footballer. Can you go left, right, backwards, forwards? And they're all kind of, I think, things that, especially when I came to the RNC at Hereford and started working with Jonathan and stuff, they were the kind of main things that we worked on at first. And it was getting me to a point where, yes, you can play football, but can you do the movements?
Right. So did the technical bit come at the same time, or did the technical bit come behind sort of being able to understand the game, orientate yourself to a pitch? So did the technical part come second, or was it at the same time?
I think your technical ability develops as you go along. And I'm speaking from my point of view because I think players who come in who maybe have had sight for a little bit longer, maybe have seen football, I think they learn that side of it very, very quickly, or have a very good understanding of it. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was sort of drip feeding it along the way, really. And like I say, even now, that's still progressing now, and I'm 11 years into my career.
Yeah. What did you find? Sorry, Uli, did you want to say something?
No. Later. Thank you.
Okay.
It was me, Jeff, it's me.
So on the back of that, what was the most difficult technical skill that you had to try and master, and why?
Learning the game. So if I'm in one place and I need to it was positional. So actually learning the game of football. If my teammate's in one position, where do I need to be? Where's a good place to stand to receive a pass? And it was the actual physical, the game of football. That was kind of where I've had to have drawings done on my hand and get the tactics board out and lots of different walkthroughs. And that's why I thrive on one-to-one coaching. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of questions that people have posed around, what exercises do you think that you've done over, these 11 years that have really helped you become a better player and help you realise your dream? So, is there a go-to exercise that you like to do, technical exercise?
Yeah. So like I've kind of just said there, I thrive on one-on-one training. So talking things through, I can get just as much out of talking something through on the pitch as I can from running around like a lunatic in the middle of a kind of frantic training session. And I think that's where I've done my most learning.
And in terms of how you like to be coached, what's your favourite way of being coached? Is it, do you need external cues? Are you, can you listen and visualize it and do it straight away? How do you like to be coached?
I need time. And by that, I mean, again, and I keep going back to it all the time, but the one-on-one stuff, time, and then I can bring that into my session. I like cues, obviously, but I'd like to think I'm moving away from those a little bit now as I'm getting maybe a little bit more experienced in the game. But yeah, that's how I like to be coached on a one-on, hands-on. So if to side foot a football or to the V then to receive a ball, I learn off touch maybe. So touching a coach's feet, how is he standing? How do you want me to actually receive this football? Rather than explain it, can I get hands on?
Yeah, and is that because you haven't got that visual cue in your own mind because you haven't seen it? You need to have that cue about, where is your non-kicking foot? Where's your strike?
Yes.
That's why that's become so important for you.
I'll give you an example, and we use the term penguin feet sometimes. So for kids who are coming into the game, we talk about penguin feet, the V position. I don't know what a penguin's feet look like. So, so it's little things like that to help me understand that. Once I've put my hands on, then I just know. I understand it then. Yeah.
And have you used... Go on, Ollie.
Yeah. Can I come in there? Hi, Owen. I think you expressed very well what I'm for years and years with helping coaches. I'm on about, and this is the so-called that we have the kinesthetic approach you're talking about, and that is, of course, you can talk and come up with some metaphorical thing with penguin feet and stuff, and that doesn't mean a thing to a blind person. They have to actually touch, feel what you're doing. There are lots of different ways. I work a lot with smaller kids, how to reinforce that, and also to empower them or to tell them you have to ask a lot. I don't know what you mean, and a lot of young players, they're not used from the school perspective to ask questions. They just want to go along with this and stuff. And this approach you're talking about, that you have to fully understand what the coach is doing. The one-to-one is crucial in our game too. Then to be able to transfer the skills to the game with the guys, but to encourage all these coaches, all the people who are in our course now, to work, to listen to people like you, to the blind players who are the most important thing in it, and to help them maybe early on to address this point that the coaching has to be kinesthetically done, in particular for new skills like how to position the feet. They have to actually be allowed to feel the coach's feet, or put their hands when an experienced player receives the ball, that you have the unexperienced person behind that blind player just placing their hands on their shoulders. They can feel then how that player is actually receiving the ball. Is he moving a bit more to the left or right? So that approach, I think that's what you talked about. That is just crucial especially for young blind sportsmen players. And we are, as sighted people here, so many in the group, we are not used to that type of teaching. So this is the crux of our passing over skills, to do that with a kinesthetic approach. Just to give a title what you were saying. Okay.
Yeah, a really, really important point, and something I think that we've reinforced, and now Owen's reinforced it over the 3 workshops. Owen, what would you tell an 18-year-old Owen Bainbridge? What's the biggest difference that would you say from the 18-year-old to where you are today, 11 years on? What's the biggest difference in your game, do you think?
I think patience, and it's, and I say to our coaches quite a bit now, I don't get angry now. Not that I was an angry person anyway, but if I can't get something first time, it's repetition, and you do it again and again and again. And I think I'm at a point now where if I'm not getting something, we'll talk about it, we'll go over it. We'll repeat and repeat and repeat until I get it. And I always say, once it's in my head, it's in my head. So I think I'm a lot more patient now, and I understand that I will get it. I will get there, but it may just take time.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about that repetition? Because you know that yourself and John are really keen on this repetition, but I suppose done in a variety of ways. You can still do the same skill, but you just don't want to be standing in front of somebody and just knocking the ball between you. You actually want a purpose to it. So you can repeat what you're trying to do, but have a purpose to the training.
Yeah, definitely. And so you can be practicing a skill then, like what you're just talking about there, knocking a ball and receiving a ball. You can, and at the same time, you can be learning a part of the game, and that, especially in blind football and stuff, you in a certain position, you may be doing that in a game many times over a game. So again, it's falling into that repetition, but repetition with the purpose.
Yeah. Who would you say is the most difficult opponent you've played against, and why?
It's Brazil, and it's the speed in which they do things. So their basics are so good. And I'm a central defender, so if I'm coming across the box to try and close somebody down, the ball's being passed across the box, he's taken a touch and he's gone, because his touch is so perfect, and that's just basics. So if you can get the basics perfect, it's very, very hard to deal with.
So you played against Brazil in 2018 in the World Cup in the group game, which unfortunately England lost. Did you feel intimidated by Ricardinho and Jefferson, or did you relish the chance of playing against, what is perceived as the best players in the world?
In honesty, they're the kind of I love it, but the difficulty again, and what they do is just so sharp. It's so quick and it's so good. It's very, very hard to play against. But yeah, I do relish it. I love them games.
A question,
because you want to prove yourself in those games.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. A question from Colin is, how has blind football helped you with other parts of your life? Do you think it has?
Yeah, massively. So, one, I wouldn't be doing things like this now. So
yeah,
I think it brings on how well you can. Yeah, definitely confidence in. It's a very different thing playing football to sitting here now just talking. You forget that people are there when you're playing football. But also, I mean, my mobility and stuff wasn't bad because I was 18 when I kind of took up blind football. But it improves everything outside. So your mobility skills, getting from A to B, your echolocation, all that sort of stuff, it brings it. And for a lot of people, if you want to get somewhere and you want to go and play football for your team, you've got to travel there. And if that means getting on the train, you've got to learn how to do it so that you're picking up extra skills all the time.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And for all the coaches to, without a doubt, it does enhance somebody's life if they do pick up those extra skills that he's talking about. Tell us about your best moment on a football pitch.
So my best moment, 2015, and we were 1-1 with Turkey, and we didn't have long to go, and it was a night game, and Dan English goes through and scores with a couple of minutes to go, and I think I was in the middle of the pitch. I think I was playing either a wing back or centre half or something, and it was the noise of the crowd. I felt like I was on a Premier League pitch or something that night, and I'm smiling while I say it because there was shivers going down my back and stuff. The atmosphere was unbelievable. And it was just, I can bring that memory back so easily whenever I want to.
Yeah. And just to give people a little bit of background, it was the last group game of the European Championships. And there was 1,000 people watching the game. And it actually was in the last minute. When you say 2 minutes, it was literally the last minute when Dan went from our byline and dribbled all through the team and scored the other byline. I still think today we got too excited with that, and then didn't help us in the next game. But anyway, that's another matter. But as you know, I've said that many times. What would be your worst moment on a blind football pitch?
So my worst moment was so losing in semi-finals, absolutely horrendous. European semi-finals. I've been unfortunate to have took 2 of the penalties in 2 of those competitions, which have helped us out. But I think my worst one personally has to be, so it was in the 2017 in Berlin, and we played Romania the first game, and I came off the bench, I think with about 15 minutes to go in the first half, and I was doing okay, felt all right, felt good, and I went through on goal, and I took the shot, I reached for the shot, and I landed on my right leg, and as I fell backwards, I ruptured the cruciate ligament in my right knee, and it was kind of, I don't even think it was afterwards. I think it was in that exact moment as I fell back, and it felt like everything was tearing in my knee joint, and the thoughts that kind of fly through your head at that point, because you don't understand what's happening, and you know it's really bad. And yeah, I think that was it. I was devastated.
Yeah, and just talk us about, because I think that shows, we talk about those who are elite athletes. You've got to have certain traits, and you've got to have mental toughness. You've got to have resilience. You've got to have you've got to be able to go with the punches, if you like. So I obviously was there for that tournament and remember your injury, and the guys were telling me that they weren't just worried about whether you'd ever play football again. They was worried about whether you'd be able to walk properly without a limp or whatever. So tell me about those dark days when, because you took over a year to come back and play again. So just talk me about some of those dark days and how you got through them.
I think it was a bit of cat and mouse, Jeff, because I mean, as staff and players and that, it's a team. We're a team, and obviously no one came up to me and said you're not going to play again. No one ever said that. That was obviously said among the staff, but I knew it myself.
Yeah, no, we didn't think that was probably something you wanted to hear after.
Of course not. But I knew that. I knew that. I'd been playing football for a long time by then, and I knew it was bad, and it was the lowest point was a couple of weeks after I was operated on very, very quickly, and I went to, it sounds very insignificant really. I went to get something out the fridge, and so I put my crutches down and I reached into the fridge, and as I was reaching, I nearly fell over, and that's when the tears came. That's when it hit me, and I said to my wife, how can I have been playing for my country only a few weeks ago? I was out in Berlin, absolutely loving life, and now look, I can't even walk. And that was my most down moment. And then from then, it was all kind of back up. I had a very, very top medical team, both kind of inside and outside of football. And I said that for this year that I'm going to be out of football, my job isn't football now. It's getting fit for football. And that's what I said. And whatever the physio said, that's what I did. And it was frustrating. There was times when I was allowed back on the pitch and they'll be like, you can come on the pitch for 10 minutes. You can have a few balls thrown at your feet. And all the other boys are training in the other half of the pitch, running around, doing everyday normal kind of training. And I'm having to leave the pitch after only 10 minutes. And the coaches had to be hard with me, and I had to be kind of hard with me, and honest. If it was hurting, we had to pull back. And that's how I got through it, really. Just that was my job. Getting fit was my job. And luckily it worked. So
I mean, just to give everybody just to really outline the injury. I mean, you had to have a cruciate graft, which is quite experimental. There's a lot of questions whether or not you should have it or not, but we made the case that we felt you should have it. But and we wanted you to have it, not to come and play football again. It was so you could, like you said, you could walk properly. And I mean, to be honest, Owen, I didn't think you'd be back. So I mean, you showed great resilience to come back. Question from Steve Jones is, once you finish playing, let's hope you go on for another 10 years or so, but what are your ambitions? Have you got any coaching ambitions, or being involved in blind football? What's your sort of ambitions once you stop playing?
So I already do sports massage. Got a little business that I do alongside my football. I've nearly finished now a course in nutrition, so I'll be able to start hopefully doing a little bit of work in that. They're things that I love. But I think for me, I'd love to stay involved in blind football, and I'd love to be kind of in a role of doing things like this, helping people, maybe new coaches, and giving an insight into the blind world really, and working with young players that are coming in, because one thing that I find fantastic is when I go to an England training camp, or I go into our league or something, and new players are there. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's really, really kind of close to my heart. I love, because I know what it can do for you, and I know kind of the opportunities that are there, and I'd love to be involved in a role like that.
Yeah,
helping.
I mean, just to let you know that on the in the chat box, there's a number of people that are saying about great attitude that you've got, great mental strength to bounce back from the injury. What did you focus on when you come back from the injury? Was there a particular game? Was there a particular tournament? Or was you just, I just want to try and get back on the pitch the best I can?
It was, that whole year was step by step. So I talked to you about 10 minutes on the pitch and stuff. Before that, the first focus was getting off the crutches. The next focus was, can I get on the bike pain free? Can I then do the 10 minutes on the pitch? Can I last a half in the league? And then obviously we went to Japan the year after, and I was fortunate enough to go there. And that was kind of the start of my comeback, really. But a massive thing for me was I looked at it as a bit of an opportunity, really, because I was off my legs for so long. I was able to kind of strip everything back and start again, literally from first touch onwards. And it was definitely an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, just hold that message, because John, I'd like to bring you in here, because actually you bring a really good point, because I'm not trying to embarrass you, but I think you came back a better player than you was before, and you maybe hit the nail on the head.
I think that's why, Jeff.
Yeah, but John,
yeah.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it was a blessing in disguise, because no one wanted to see a player of, he was such a well thought of player in the team that no one wanted to see him in that kind of pain. But Owen's dedication to whatever he's asked to do, if I'm really honest, is kind of second to none to anyone I've ever worked with. And he took that opportunity to reinvent himself as a footballer. But I think he said something earlier, which was probably the most poignant thing, is that he's got such patience, even though I know deep down inside he's quite an angry player, quite an aggressive player. He showed great strength of character to start again, really. And it was a great opportunity for us as coaches, because that 10 minutes we had on the pitch, we knew were vital to him to develop. So we made sure that it was absolutely what he needed. And it was like you said there, I mean, does himself a disservice. It wasn't just 10 minutes once on a pitch and then he can move on. It was 10 minutes for 3 times a week for a month. It wasn't like it just progressed so quickly that we knew he was going to play. And I was like you, Jeff, as a football coach, I wanted him to be a backer and play for the team. So I think he of any player I've ever worked with, he deserves something. But also I didn't want to get him hurt. So that's probably the first time I've ever worked with a player where I did exactly what I was told by our physio team as well. I literally 10 minutes, that's it, done. But no, he's another player that, or he's probably one of the only players I know that if you worked on a pitch and you did a one-to-one with him and you talked him through something, he'd learn as much as he would if he was acting it on a pitch. And his learning style is it's detriment to him, really. If more people,
good, thanks for that. Owen, so you're a full-time player at the moment. You're doing some of your massage as well. So what does your training week look like? Tell us what that looks like.
Yeah, so three times on the pitch, so 3 training sessions, mixed with obviously some of them are conditioning, some are technical. Then we have I do a couple of strength and conditioning sessions as well with a strength and conditioning coach. I do quite a bit of my own stuff as well, to be honest. Core work, a bit more strength work, a recovery session. But then if it's needed at the end of the week, so say we've had some football sessions or whatever, and I haven't hit what I need to hit on the heart rate monitor and stuff, then I'll be getting on the treadmill or doing a sprint session or some sort of conditioning cardio session to get me fitness where it needs to be.
Okay, brilliant. So I suppose just one last question from me, and then if there's any from the floor. So what would you like to say? We've got a number of coaches online who are of all, some at different stages of their development. What would you say to the coaches who are online about what they could do to help their players? Is there any sort of golden nuggets you might be able to give them that would enable them to work well with their players?
No, I think it's know your player. So find out what, like I've talked about my learning style. That's not the same for everybody in our team. Everybody's different. And a player might come in with fantastic orientation skills, but he might not have ever seen the game of football before. So I think it's know your player, find out where the player is and be patient.
Okay. Anything else?
I think maybe don't try to run before you can walk. So make sure that player understands the basics of blind football. So first touch, dribble, start small, really.
Okay. So what would the Owen Bainbridge of today say to the Owen Bainbridge of 11 or 12, dreaming about playing for England and dreaming about playing in World Cups? What advice would you give them? Would you give the young Owen to maybe progress a little bit quicker than you might have done?
Study the game more. I absolutely love it now. I love when we do technical sessions and walkthroughs, and I love it. And I think before it was maybe just a little bit too much about running around and putting tackles in, to be honest. Where I think if I'd studied that, do you agree, Jeff? Well, I think studying the game and learning the game, I wish I'd done more of that.
Brilliant. Owen, look, it's been a great 40 odd minutes. Thank you for sharing your time, and thank you for sharing, those times that weren't so good, but also for sharing the times that have been good. And I think there's a whole range of people. We can't give you a round of applause, but I mean, on behalf of everybody, thanks very much, and continue to keep doing what you're doing. And we look forward to seeing you at many more IPSA tournaments in the future. And keep being the good person you are.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Thank you. Ollie, is there, John, anything sort of just as we wind up before we hand back to David Sturton, and we'll just tell everybody how we finish? Anything you'd like to final thoughts, comments?
Well, just to first of all, thank you, Owen, very much for your insights, and just to reinforce basically what Owen said. We all want too much too quickly, and of course there is, which is normal, there's a certain amount of impatience, especially for young players or young coaches to progress rather quickly. Most of the times, and Owen said that, I talked to many blind footballers after years where it's basically we all said always back to the basics, and that's just how to stop a ball properly instead of getting carried away by the match and all this. And I think that's what he said too. So you can't, the technical skills are basically the four legs of a table, and if you don't master them, you can talk about tactics as much as you like, but if you can't stop the ball or can't dribble or pass the ball properly, then you'll find you always get back to that. So early on in the game, when you have young players, hone on to those basic skills over and over again. Okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Uli. And John, any last comments before we go back to David?
Yeah, just lastly, I'd say that blind people who want to play football are blind footballers, and in every type of football in all over the world, you get different standards. So remember that when you work with a blind player, they may get to the best player they've ever in the world, or they might just enjoy playing football. And as a coach, if you remember that, the player will enjoy it no matter what, and take the expectation away from them and let them enjoy themselves.
Brilliant, thanks, John. And I'll leave it to David Sturton to say to have the last word. David.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff. I think it's been a fantastic session this evening. Thanks very much, Jeff, Uli, Jonathan, and especially Owen for sharing his experience with us as one of the outstanding players in the England national team. There was one question for you, Owen, earlier from Steve Jones. If there were male and female players in the team when you started, I suspect the answer is no. But it does bring to mind women's blind football, and I would like to stress the fact to all of you that we're very much promoting women's blind football and women's involvement in blind football. It's one of our focus areas, so we are very keen to have women involved as players, but also as coaches, guides, referees, administrators, managers, and so on, in all roles within the game. So this is something that we need to bear in mind. And when you're looking for players, maybe for your team, then please make sure you look at both sexes, not just at male players. We have 10-15 minutes remaining, and perhaps this is an opportunity for some of you to pose some more general questions about blind football. Now, maybe not so much about coaching, but if you have any questions about the game, the history of the game, the future of the game, where we're going, there's a lot of experience here in the panel of speakers we've had. Goodness knows how many years experience within the game. So I don't know if anyone would like to take the floor or would like to post their question in the chat to ask a question about the game in general. I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that.
David Sebastian here.
I'm sorry, Francis?
Yes, this is Sebastian is my first name, so please.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been an amazing opportunity to share to listen to you guys and to understand what's happening in the world of blind football. And I've had the opportunity of meeting Yuli personally, and I'm very new to blind football. So I'm more of a PE teacher and a regular football coach and a multi-sport coach. I work with Special Olympics. But I'm trying to get blind football going in my state in India, which is Tamil Nadu, which is right down on the southeast corner of the coast. And one of the things that we have, our biggest challenge that I find is that the players who turn up for my session are for the first time ever taking part in any form of sports. So it's a pretty big challenge for me because they just hear it from their friends and they're quite excited. And as you said just now, fortunately for me, I'm getting more girls coming in. I have more girls turning up for my sessions than boys. And in fact, on our base of registered players, we have more girls than boys, and we're trying very strongly to promote that amongst the girls. But what we are looking at and what we are lacking is I've understood how to create an environment for them and make them welcome. But what we really need is how do you make a person who has never played sports feel comfortable playing sports?
One for you, Uli, I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
In teaching education.
Yes, good to. Yeah, we have met in Kochi, haven't we?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, Sebastian. I think that's what I tried to hint a little bit during our 3 sessions. The coaching workshop, we've taken that pretty far, also technically towards national teams and towards excellence. And we mustn't forget, and I think that's what you're saying, that we are dealing with a lot of young people who actually have never had a proper physical education session, or don't know how to run straight. So for me, and I think that's why I'm linking up. To use football actually to literally use football for orientation, mobility, for confidence, to just from moving along the sideboards, just running across to the other side. Very, very basic things, particularly without the balls. We're just using football to create a space for them to run freely. And I think that's not to underestimate when we talk about tactics and all sorts of things, that we also have a responsibility for people out there, for young people who just want to gain some confidence to run freely without a cane, without a guide dog, without somebody holding them by the hand. And for me, it's already a huge satisfaction when I can see young people being able to move freely and gaining more confidence. And I know they will never play for India or England or Germany or anyone. And I think that's not to underestimate how we use our framework of football with creating a space, a safe space, an environment for them to move, and all the things which go with it towards the confidence. That's what Owen said, or other people said before, just to actually get to the pitch, to take the train, to get to become part of society. In a different way, to become assertive, to show sighted people, look, I can do something you can't do when you close your eyes. We should be already happy with this. So if you have a bunch of young players, young people there, be happy with and take small steps, and that they can run backwards, forwards, and again through your offering football, gaining a lot of confidence just generally. I think that's not to be underestimated.
Thank you, Yuli.
Thank you, Yuli. Thank you, Francis. There's a question from Rennie van Offel from the Netherlands, I think, who's asking about instruction videos and where we can find those. Jonathan, I think you have the English FA produced some very good videos recently. Would you like to give us more information on that? You're on mute, Jonathan.
I hate it when people do that as well. Yeah, I think that was part of Icon. I think, did we not put a link on there on the second workshop? Yeah, I mean,
I think we did. It's on the FA website. There was a special program that you have as part of the. I can't remember the name right now, but I think yes, it was there on in the second session.
Yeah, that was part of the grassroots department, so they put some stuff on over lockdown. I mean, I know I am working with a partner at the moment to put together a coaching video, which may be a bit more descriptive. Some of the things I showed you on the first workshop, but a bit more professionally done with, a layered up approach where you start with basics and work all the way through to work all the way through to the higher level stuff. So hopefully that'll be out very soon. That could help.
Yeah, two things maybe. Obviously, our game lives from movement and touching and all the real world and stuff. And of course, what we're offering now is probably the not the best way of learning how to coach, really. Because we're doing it per internet here, and the best way is, of course, we have a IPSA blind football coaching manual as a beginning, and to actually do videos on this and to follow the whole thing of coaching. But nothing beats, of course, real workshops. And I would think that in the years to come that we can maybe in a form of academy or something like this, that we can offer from IPSA football a coaching seminars worldwide. And I think that's, of course, the best way of learning for coaches, and have blind players on site being actually instrumental to, like Owen said, to then be on the pitch and to learn also from a blind person, in reality, and assessing coaches and all the rest. So there's a lot of good things which can come. Meanwhile, I think that's what we've done here is a good step. And the other thing is, of course, if Jonathan, because we as IPSA, we don't have video coaching material, but I don't know if you can kickstart that somewhere, and we, with some funding, will try to get alongside the manual for beginners to bring coaching material, video material forward. I mean, that's the way to go, and accompany that with real workshops for coming coaches, and maybe have like in regular football, have a certificate, B certificate, and that sort of stuff. I think that's the way we should aim for.
Excellent. Thank you, Uli. Thanks, Jonathan. And thanks for posting on the chat, Jeff, some more information about where to find that kind of information. That kind of material. So I think we just have a couple of minutes to close now. So once again, thanks to all the presenters, the speakers, to Owen for being with us this evening. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us and for showing an interest in blind football. It's been fantastic to see how many people have taken part in the refereeing course we hosted a couple of months ago, and in this coaching course. As Uli said, it would be better if these were face-to-face coaching sessions, working with local players, but we will get back to that eventually as we return to normality. So once again, with thanks and acknowledgement to UEFA for providing the funding to make this course available, we will sign off now, and we will be in touch soon, and we hope to see you all coaching your local players in the very near future, and maybe meeting many of you at tournaments in the future. Thank you very much now. Bye-bye.